Oh, last time.
Want to call to order the meeting of the Livingston Parish Ordinance Committee for Tuesday, November 10th. Ms. Long, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Mack?
Here.
Mr. King?
Here.
Mr. Talbert?
Here.
Mr.
Mr. Greenhouse couldn't make it tonight, so I'm going to be sitting in as a chair. The only item on the agenda tonight under new business is review and discussion of and recommendations of ordinances. A discussion of section 125-25 drainage impact study / drainage design requirements. Y'all saw the little text message thing yesterday. I requested this. Simply, I went to a meeting today. I think we need to do some clarification. If you read in the ordinance where we talk about the drainage impact study, we make them design the 25-year, we make them do a 100-year look up and downstream. But we don't define how far we look, we don't define what look means. And I found out today that we let people drain into a ditch that's a fail before they ever put any more additional water in.
Yeah, that don't sound right.
So I think we need to look at trying to amend this thing, and this was just a preliminary discussion. But I'll give you the background of what brought this to light. There is a development in my district. Basically, the property as it was used to drain into this little ditch at 10. And these numbers are rounded because there's little decimals behind it, but 10 CFS, which basically is a volume of water. You know, that's what it drained in. After they poured the parking lot and reconfigured this property, it was gonna drain at 37 CFS into this ditch. Now, when they made some inquiries, this is technically a private ditch. It's a natural drain, but it's a private natural drain, meaning that there is no servitude for the Gravity Drainage District to go in there and do any work. But there are multiple properties that drain into this private ditch, and it goes into Harrison Lateral, which then runs into the Amy River. There was some concern initially when it was coming before the council. I had somebody the guy that had the property reached out to a business partner of mine. My business partner called me, told me what the concerns were. I went and met with the people whose property this private ditch runs through. Said that, you know, there's some concerns about running through here. If we've got to upsize some pipe, would y'all let them? Absolutely. So the people that the water was running through their property were willing to have them upsize the pipe, do whatever it is to make it work. Basically, what it amounts to is that they determined that the ditch was a fail. That in a rain event, there was more water that went in the ditch than the ditch was designed to take. It went out of the banks. So when they designed the retention pond, they designed it for a 100-year rain event, which means they got it down to 10 CFS so that there was no increase on the peak water level, meaning that in a peak rain event, the water level was the same as it was prior to the additional construction. Now, it still gets out of bank. The ditch is draining into is still a fail. It doesn't increase the water level, peak water level. However, because we've put all this water in this huge retention pond designed to hold a 100-year rain event, we're gonna release the water over a 4 or 5 hour period. So not only is it a fail, used to we'd get a peak rise and it looked like a straight up the mountain to straight down the mountain. Now it's straight up the mountain and it's a slope. And so basically these people who have water in their yard are now gonna have it for 3 or 4 or 5 hours instead of 30 minutes. So, you know, it just led me to realize what's going on in some of these situations, that our ordinance, we tried to write ordinance to protect people downstream and look at the, you know, impact upstream on some of these ditches and to look downstream, but there's no teeth in defining how far upstream we look, how far downstream we look. There's been some discussion, there's been some, some floodplain guys and some different people have thrown some ideas out. We need to look at the watershed of that ditch, or maybe the watershed of the ditch it drains into, maybe at the Huck 10, but the Huck 10 tends to be a pretty big area, so it's probably too much. But we need to consider, what do we wanna look at? Like in this particular instance, it's an unnamed ditch that runs into Harrison Ladder. Do we wanna look at just that ditch till it dumps into a big canal? Do we wanna look at the impact on the big canal? You follow what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Do we even wanna let people drain into a ditch that's a fail without making them do some improvements? While I sat in that meeting today and talked to this engineer about, what, he said, well, what if they don't let you make, let's say the developer wanted to go in and improve this ditch. If he improves the ditch and makes it hold more water, then he might have been able to shrink his retention pond. If the ditch was dug out, back to original standards, all the muck was cleaned out of it, he might have been able to lower his outfall a foot or foot and a half, which would then make the pond be able to shrink because you had more holding capacity.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some positives for the developer to go possibly do some improvements in the ditch. But what if the guy downstream didn't want you improving his ditch? He might think he could block the development by not letting the improvements happen. So there's some other things that have to be looked at. I just wanted us to start thinking about, think about all the impacts of doing that. It will definitely, if we don't let people drain into ditches that fail, because basically all the ordinance says now is that you cannot increase the peak water levels, right?
Mm-hmm.
0%, isn't that what it says? 0%. So basically, if currently a piece of property drains at 10 CFS, it doesn't matter what I do to it as long as I have it leave at 10 CFS. Or less, so that there's zero increase on the peak water level. However, it doesn't say how long we can keep that peak up. And so.
Well, it says no negative impacts.
Does it actually say that?
It says no negative impacts. To me, a rise in the water for 6 hours and it wasn't but one before is a negative impact.
It says that there's zero impact. Where does it say?
The drainage impact analysis shall indicate existing condition peak.
I think there's it says zero increase on the peak, if I'm not mistaken.
Where's that at?
Lauren, where does it go in we define what's gotta happen in the drainage impact?
I don't think it actually, if you find it, I'd be surprised, cause I've asked about it before and they said that's something they put in and started making people do, but I don't think we ever wrote it in.
No, we talked about.
Where it says it has no negative impacts upstream.
Where at?
Yeah.
Where at, Lauren?
G2,
G2.
section 125,
DFG.
2.
Where about? Wait. G2, yeah.
True. The impact of the 100.
Yeah, but it just says up and down. It says no negative impacts upstream or downstream of the development. That's what I'm saying. If
Yeah, and you can control that. You can control that with your retention.
you
Right.
cannot, yeah, but that's a negative impact if before the water was staying up an hour and now it's staying up 5 hours. That's negative.
But that's not, that is not.
You could argue that. I mean, I kind of semi-agree with you.
I mean,
Yeah,
You could argue the fact that-
let's talk about our friend that lives across the canal from me.
Okay,
So we know when there's a rain event, the water gets one brick
from getting in his house.
from getting in his house.
Yeah.
And when the rain quits,
That's pretty close.
Oh, I'm just telling
Every
you.
time they get 2 or 3 inches.
Every time there's a heavy rain, it gets one brick from getting in his house. Now, the reason it only gets one brick is because at some point, there's some
It
other
goes over the
place,
road.
there's some other place that when it gets to that level, it breaks over the road and it never gets above that point. The issue is right now, it goes to that point and then it goes, as soon as it quits raining, within 30 minutes, his yard is dry. However,
I think it's a little longer,
Well,
than that, but yeah,
but
it goes out
however-
pretty quick.
however, under this scenario, the way we're talking about, we could put additional water running beside his house as long as we didn't increase that peak elevation. Let's say that they put a big development behind him and run the water beside him, and then it stays there for 4 or 5 hours.
Which very well may happen, cause that's a big piece of property
Well, I
back
mean,
there.
but you understand what I'm saying? What I'm telling you
yeah.
is,
That's a
way
negative
the
impact.
way this ordinance is written, that's acceptable.
Yeah,
So I talked to Morgan this morning about it, she's gonna help us with this, but I just wanted y'all to be thinking
Yeah.
along the lines of what we're facing. Because there are several things. Number one, we know that they technically look at a ditch and they say, it's a fail on stuff that drains in it already. Okay, so you got constituents that talk about, y'all not improving the drainage, and y'all keep letting development happen. Well, we say, yeah, but we're engineering this development so that there's no impact. Well, what we determine impact is on a rain event, what is the peak level of the water surface? And we're not looking at that, how long it takes it to go away. Remember the other day before the hurricane when we got the 9 inches of rain in 3 hours?
yeah, on the night before.
Okay, so remember I told you we went to the subdivision, which brought the hurricane,
Yeah.
which brought the Beaver Creek thing up in the Virgin Canal thing.
Right,
Okay.
that's right.
So at that point in time, we got a little subdivision that's got these laterals that drain into Beaver Creek. But they couldn't drain and the water's sitting on the road because Beaver Creek is actually full, so the water's running backward in the lateral away from Beaver Creek instead of toward Beaver Creek. Now, if your house isn't flooded and the road's underwater, and people keep driving up and down the road for a 4, 5, 6 hour period, then you've got to battle the water that's being pushed to your house for that period of time. So I think we need to start looking at more than what is the peak water level. You know, so we say, okay, the water's at this now, as long as we don't exceed that, then the development's okay. We need to look at what the impact of the development is if it goes into a ditch that doesn't fail. And then how long are we impacting the people upstream and downstream? And we need to define what is upstream and downstream. Is it that canal? Is it the,
Is it where it ties into something else?
is it the ditch that it ties into? We've gotta
Yeah.
start defining that. Because Morgan basically says, I have no ability, after it leaves the property, to really enforce what's happening in those ditches. So that's what we gotta look at, is what is the impact upstream and downstream, and how long is the impact? We need to quit looking at what is the peak surface level
I
of the
agree
water.
with you, Gary. I agree with you 100%.
So that's
The
all
only thing I
that,
wanted to say is, why we're thinking about this, you know, not that the developer couldn't, I guess you could say, you know, compensate the gravity drainage district or parish, you know, for an improvement to a canal. That may be the right path, instead of having the developer go. And I mean, my thought would be that you need to make sure that the actual, what are we calling this, canal, tributary, whatever, you know, that to me, it's about capacity, you know, and flow rates, and to me, it needs to be measured all the way to the main stream.
well,
You know what I mean? Now,
Well, which one would be called the mainstream? The
well, I
lateral
mean,
that
usually
leads to, or the
you've got
river?
usually if you've got a pretty large tributary, like you got in my area, we have like Blood River and the Turkey Creeks, but to me, you know, you look at the capacity of that creek, and if that capacity of that creek can handle it, then you're good to go, and most of the time you're probably going to be okay. In this case right here, you're talking about where the water is outside the ditch bank, and it's failed previously.
And we're still
Well,
allowed.
Yeah, I don't know about to me, they either need to come and maybe engineer and dig it deeper or something so that it can handle the current capacity, and then whatever you're putting into it so that it doesn't flow out the banks. To me, your capacity is, and it's just my thought,
Well,
is not flowing outside the bank, you know,
see,
into people's yards.
And this is kind of where this thing does. When the initial discussions before, and I'm gonna tell you what, the discussions about how to improve the canal that the ditch it drained into happened prior to the preliminary plat plan being approved.
But,
And I told the developer today, I said, I can tell you, it was my understanding that there was gonna be downstream improvements made on this ditch, or it would have never got through the preliminary plat phase. And the engineer said, well, there was no reason to object it. I said, there's all kind of reasons to object it. I said, we could have deferred it 2 or 3 months. And I said, within a 2 or 3 month deferral, somebody would have figured out that we better go
Yeah,
make
go
some
fix
improvements to the downstream or it's never gonna get through.
yeah,
I said, my understanding was there was gonna be some downstream improvements, so there was no objection on the preliminary plat approval.
Because it almost does.
If
And
I'm
Sam thought that when we did it, that there was discussion of that, so I'm gonna ask the girls to go look at them,
pull up the minutes,
to go listen to the discussion and see what exactly was said.
in
when it-
planning,
No, in here,
in here.
in here. But anyway, here's the deal. The developer today is like, look, I'm over budget now. You know, the pond's designed, we're already constructing it, you know, so he wasn't really, but he was, if we would have caught this early on, if he could have made improvements to the ditch.
And
whether it was
save some
buying-
more of his
whether-
property.
Whether it was buying culverts and then getting gravity drainage to install them and mucking out the ditch to increase the volume,
Mm-hmm.
or whether it was him actually doing the work, there was some benefit to him on the retention pond, not only from the size of land, but the liability, because this is a facility that's gonna have dry retention.
Yeah, and it seemed like to me one time, I thought I read somewhere where it had like upstream, downstream being like a 3-mile radius.
We've asked
We-
about that,
we-
Shane,
we-
we
What happened to
have,
that?
We
many
never-
times, but we
was
never
like a 3-mile
identified it.
radius.
It
or
never,
something?
it never got approved.
So what Gary's asking for, I think, is for us to identify where that would be, how far they have to look, and then see who's responsible for increasing the flow of that ditch, tributary, lateral, whatever it may be.
And I think, well,
Yeah,
and
if
Morgan,
if it exceeds capacity and flow rate,
And it's gotta be improved.
it's gotta be improved.
Yeah.
right, so we
And the
talked.
developer's gonna have to fund it.
Yeah, so that's what we talked about, is that Morgan's gonna help us. We should never increase water into a ditch that currently fails. I mean, and that's what it amounts to. They say we don't increase the flow rate, but we're ultimately gonna put more water through a ditch that fails.
Yeah, yeah.
So-
I agree you
So-
shouldn't do
On
that.
this G4,
I agree you shouldn't do that.
they base all the calculations at a 10-year, and I've asked them before,
They designed the inside of the development for 10 years.
I know,
But, and that's pretty standard to design in 10-year because of the size of the pipe to design for 25 year, as long as we retain for 25 years. Now, so this is what we do. We design for 10,
okay?
we study 10, 25, and 100, we retain for 25, and then we make sure we make sure there's no negative impact theoretically on 100 year. However, since we didn't identify what negative impact or how far it is, and then we didn't identify what's a fail or a pass, so the engineering company comes in and does all the work. They look at this ditch, and this ditch is a fail. At that point in time, we should say, okay, you can't put outflow into a failed ditch. You gotta get the ditch to work
To pass
properly.
before, yeah.
But that's not what happens.
No.
What they say now is, okay, the ditch is a fail. I've got 10 CFS coming in the property now, I gotta have 10 CFS later. So basically, their way to accomplish that is they had to design for 100-year retention to get to stay at 10
Right.
CFS into that ditch.
I got you now.
So,
Okay.
so look, they did according to the ordinance what the ordinance says. It just proved to me today in looking at that meeting that there's some issues with the ordinance that we need to address. And that's
Yeah,
all.
I agree.
Yeah, I think
I
we
just
did a
wanna-
good job.
I agree
We
with
changed something that had never been there.
I thought there was also an option in here to require 100-year stormwater retention.
I think if there's some
I thought we
impact,
could-
I think that planning can request 100-year. However,
But to where?
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you
I
retain
agree.
it. If you
I
running
agree
it
with you.
into
I
a
just
ditch
was-
as a fail already,
Yeah,
you know, I mean, they basically, they design for a 100-year rain event. The pond is built for a 100-year event.
If you remember,
Yeah, and
on
anyway,
Buddy
it just
Ellis,
talks about determining capacities and determine capacities, but it doesn't tell you
how far,
if you exceed the capacity,
then
it's a
what?
no-go.
Yeah.
Right, so we gotta
Yeah.
look at that. Now, but let me, there's some,
Yeah, it's
there's
hard
some
to get
traps
into.
that the engineer pointed out
Yeah.
today, and I wanna talk to you about it.
Okay,
There are probably, if you look, there's tons of our ditches that are fails. So we don't wanna kill development.
We don't wanna kill the
But what we wanna do is look at ways to fix that capacity situation. And then, let's say, for example, this ditch runs through some family land that probably has 3 different owners associated with it. Then it runs through one guy's property to a deal. What if one person there says, I don't want you to improve the drainage? We can't let one person's not want to kill
That's right,
a development.
that's right.
So
So we need,
when you go look at state law on a natural drainage,
Right.
state law actually grants 100-foot servitude on both sides of a natural drainage. However, within the parish historically, we've never exercised state law and said, we don't care whether we have a servitude or not. State law grants me a servitude. So that's just a philosophical thing that you do have to compensate them if you end up making it bigger, within
and you
that
can't
servitude.
damage somebody else's
And you can't
property.
damage, you gotta bring it back, but it does give you the right to get on it and
That's
do it.
right.
So,
You're
and
right.
that makes sense,
so,
and it
so
should.
typically, nobody can stop you
Can't stop.
from making improvements,
That's
but
right.
you're gonna have to start doing stuff that in the
Well,
past we typically.
So we need to write that in there and get that right.
Well,
Yeah.
you need to think about all aspects of it and all the problems that might arise and try to address them so that we can do this one more time and be done with it.
Okay, let me tell you, so we talking about improving a tributary creek, stream, something like that. On Buddy Ellis, I'm not sure whether it was DSLD or Horton, they had to improve the major canal that they were building on the bank of, wait like a mile, or they wasn't gonna let them build it. So they are looking at that. This has been 3 or 4 years ago.
Was that actually downstream or upstream, or that
It
was just
it
like
was-
within the
No,
development?
it was at the development and downstream, because it was causing an issue already. They had flooding problems. They said, if you don't improve this, it's enough.
And the problem is this particular ditch is a naturally occurring lateral that doesn't have a servitude, so it tends to be viewed as private.
And so nobody wants to
And
mess
so
with it.
nobody says, typically the gravity drainage district says, I don't have a servitude, it's not my responsibility. So we gotta do, we gotta change some philosophies at some gravity drainage districts, we might have to address it by ordinance. But those are all the ramifications that, we know there's a problem. Now, Morgan, I'll talk to her on the phone, she's gonna help us work through this, but
Yeah, we
there
gotta
are
have
some-
an engineer to
there
help
are
us
some
work through
problems
this.
that we need to
You
work
know.
through, so that's all this was about, to bring that to
Well,
the
I'm glad
attention
that
of everybody.
I'm not glad it happened in your district, but it's shining light on something that we've been needing to address. And it's only gonna get worse, especially on the west side, where it's thick, but it's coming, Shane, like we've been saying.
Well,
It's coming.
as subdivisions come to your area,
It's
and
coming.
specifically where you don't have a gravity drainage district to go review all those laterals.
It would
know
be
what I'm
even
talking about?
more important than that.
Then you're gonna have some engineer do the review and says, okay, the ditch is a fail, but the parish doesn't care if it's a fail or not, but that's not the way the ordinance is written. As long as I don't increase the peak water surface level, then I can drain into it, so that's all they're designing for. And it's not necessarily.
Let's fix it.
It's not necessarily making it better in the long run.
Right.
So that's it. So that's that discussion. Is there any old business anybody wants to talk about? Mr. Gerald, you wanna come up here and talk about some old business?
No, not old business, but I wanna discuss.
Okay, go ahead. What are you gonna say?
For the drainage. So, we're the same way. Hey, I'm Gerald McMorris, 1899 Bill Wise Road. But, over on the, Hancock Road, Hennick Road, we got massive subdivisions. You got Thunder's Ridge, you got all the big subdivisions. We have one creek that goes in the middle of all these subdivisions, which goes west across Brown
Right.
Road.
Yep.
It flows downstream to Coyote Creek all the way across 147. So I've been looking at photos of people's houses after the retention ponds, how they hold the water, how the water comes up, goes down, then right back up again. So I'm here tonight trying to figure out how can we help these people out. Nobody takes ownership. We don't have a drainage district.
You talking about now with what's already there?
Yeah. So the problem we're having, the west side is part of the drainage board.
Yeah, drainage
The
one down there.
Felder Street that goes across people's property is a parish
Outside of it.
issue. Nobody wants to take ownership to go in here and help get this cleaned
I
out.
got my idea.
So
Time for
I'm here to
another
help these
election.
people out because look, they're flooding bad on this road.
Right.
I think,
It's happening a lot all over.
I mean, my
Evo.
thought,
It-
my thought
it
would be
is.
this, Gerald, and to me, you would have a lot of say-so because it's your council area. You know, and we could work with the current administration, you know, Leighton and his group, but to me, what needs to happen is, you know, thank goodness this 1% sales tax passed, but the current funding, you know, for roads and road drainage and road maintenance and overlaying roads, for that council area, to me, your allotment, you know, not dollar for dollar, but you should have an allotment, to me, you know, somewhere in the neighborhood of 1/9 of whatever's collected. You know, you should be able to take a percentage of that, and the parish needs to go in there and make whatever upgrades needs to happen, you know, prioritize what's the most important and work towards improving that drainage in that area. You know, now, unfortunately, if you are taking that allotment, and you are spending, you know, a portion of it on drainage, well, then you're probably gonna not be able to get quite as much funding spent on overlaying roads and maintaining roads, you know, because you're spending that allotment on drainage. But both of them are equally important. I think that, you know, the administration, to me, being that they are the ones that's liable for drainage outside the gravity drainage district, you can't just say, oh, well, we're not gonna do anything. No, we can. It's just, this is how much funding for this area, and you need to prioritize that, and you need to go, you know, handle it that way, you know, and if you live inside a gravity drainage area, then, you know, that's a huge benefit, because your allotment, you know, and it doesn't have to be dollar for dollar, you know, you gotta look at all projects and the benefits, you know, across district lines and all that kind of stuff, you know, but your allotment can go for pretty much overlaying roads and maintaining roads, because you already have a different set of funding to fix those type of problems that you're talking about. So to me, I think that needs to be the direction until
We get it funded.
you can get maybe
And we gotta
new
get it
funding
funded.
or separate funding to address those types of problems, you know, because they are major problems. That area right there is very populated. It's a wonderful place to live because it's such quick access to all the wonderful things, you know,
Both
that
north
area
and
has.
south, yeah.
But,
You can get there
but
easy.
like you're saying, you know, if you don't go in and fix that downstream and upstream drainage stuff, you know what I mean? All those subdivisions, I mean, they just flood, and then the road goes bad because the water's
Well,
flooding.
that's what I was just fixing
You
to say,
know what
yeah.
I'm saying? You got rocks instead of pavement. You know, it's just a disaster. But to me, I would make an appointment, and I would go sit down and I would talk to Sam DiGeronimo and Leighton Ricks and tell them exactly
What you
want
want fixed
done.
in your district.
And to me, it's their job to go figure out what allotment can be provided and go in there and take a look at that with the parish review engineer and develop a solution and fix that problem.
Well,
Mr. Gary, I agree with you on the detention ponds. I see the photos, what happens in that area, so.
Mhm.
He can't
I learned
hear you.
something-
he can't hear you.
I said I learned something new tonight about the retention ponds, so, good information, because these people over here are suffering with the water.
Well, see,
And,
that-
so,
Yeah, even with,
that would help out a whole bunch,
Well, so here-
not now,
I agree with
because
that too.
the damage is
Right.
done.
Here's the deal, so basically what you're telling me is that you got an area where everything's draining, the ditch will fail.
It's gotta be a fail.
Okay,
It's
so here's
treated.
the deal, if we quit letting people drain in a failed ditch,
Yeah.
We're either gonna stop development in that area, or there's gonna be tremendous pressure on the administration
It's
to
gonna be a
solve,
disaster.
to solve this
Yeah.
failed problem.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. I mean, if we say, if this ditch is a fail, you can't drain into it.
That's right.
Then those people who own property, who wanna sell it or develop it, are gonna be on somebody's behind
To
to
get it
solve those
fixed.
issues. And let's face it,
I think
I
you're
mean,
right.
that, I
You-
think
you're
that,
right.
I think that goes a long way to fixing some of this stuff.
I do too.
The
I
other
really-
thing,
I really
I
agree
think
with
there's gonna be, there's an item on the agenda Thursday night that I think will, you know, I've heard this saying, and I hope it's not true, that committees are a place that great ideas go to die. But I hope that's not the case. I hope that
too.
that this drainage committee, you know, this committee that we put together to look at, you know, how to figure out how to create a parish-wide situation to address drainage, you know, something happens. I think that, you know, look,
We're gonna prove that theory wrong, Gary.
well, I mean, I'm all in favor, and I'm gonna be quite honest with you. I'm just gonna tell you a philosophy, something I think, and sometimes we put committees together and we put people on. And I think what happens is this is an issue that the 9 of us who are elected need to sit down and figure out how to solve. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I understand there are people that can give us guidance, but ultimately, this decision is gonna rest on this lawmaking body here to figure out how to solve the problems.
That's right.
And I hate to say this, we just got on to pass a 1 cent sales tax in this parish, in which 3/4 dedicated to roads. But when you go look at the taxes that come in to maintain some things within this parish, and you look at some other, I'm not saying that people in the parish don't pay a lot of taxes, I think you gotta go look at where those dollars go. And I think we need to make people aware of where their tax dollars go, what portion actually comes to this council and the administration for us to implement the improvements within this parish so far as infrastructure. And I think we need to become a little more transparent on how we do some things.
No doubt about that.
And so, you know, we've got a road fund budget that DPW hides in. I'm gonna strongly push that this budget that we approve has a DPW line item, that a whole budget in itself that we transfer money into out of the road fund. And then make DPW, that way that DPW budget is accountable and visible to everybody. And it's not hidden.
It's easy
It's not hidden in some
It's
fund.
easy
I mean, ultimately, because
to know.
we put all kind of stuff within this fund, you know, overlay projects, whatever. We need to create a DPW operational fund that we transfer whatever that percentage of money is that we operate DPW in, into a fund that's easily identifiable for constituents when they wanna look at the budget.
Yeah.
So that DPW operates at X number of dollars a year. Because ultimately, if you don't know what some of those line items mean, you can't figure out whether that's DPW money or what. And so, you know,
Right.
so I mean, I'm just telling you, there's some things that we're gonna try to talk about.
Improvements. I
We're
call
gonna-
it improvements.
We're gonna, some things we need to
It
talk
is.
about
It definitely
within,
is.
before we approve the 2020 amended budget and the 2021 operational budget. We need to look at some things that you've heard it when you talk to people, you know, when you were promoting this tax and you were out talking to people, you heard the same things over and over and over again.
What do y'all do
And
with the
we
money?
need to start addressing it immediately.
It needs to be addressed.
So that 15 years from now, when this thing comes up for renewal, it'll
Be
easily,
no question.
it'll
That's
easily
right.
be solved.
Yep.
What?
Nothing. You're 100% correct.
I hear you. Anyway, anything else, Mr. McMorrin?
That's it, thanks.
All right, any other councilman got anything they wanna address?
Were you gonna talk about something
What?
under old business?
Oh, you talking about the litter?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean,
Tell us what you're waiting on so I can tell people that are asking me.
okay, so I'm not against any of the current changes. I just wanted to see some clarification. Well, we're modifying an ordinance. You know, maybe calling it an enhancement, calling it mirroring.
And we got some new numbers in there where they
Yeah,
changed
whatever
the
you want to call it. I mean,
statutes.
it's not,
Yeah.
it's going to be a little different.
Yeah,
Got some wording in there, some added wording.
okay.
And my thought, and I haven't done a whole lot of research, so just kind of correct me if you're 100% sure that I'm wrong about
Okay.
this. But my thought after reading the state law was that it read such that the constables can issue citations for littering and it be prosecuted or handled in justice of the peace court.
Yep.
Okay. And then if the sheriff's department issues a citation for littering, that's handled through the 21st JDC.
Right.
And so what I was looking at, it was that if we change it the way we propose to change it, that it would authorize the constables to issue citations for littering, and that be handled through the 21st JDC, prosecuted through the 21st JDC by the district attorney's office. And so, like I say, not 100% against that. I just would like to do a little bit more, I don't know what you want to call it, research, or maybe get a little bit more legal advice on if that's the best move based on expense and, overloading the 21st JDC and if that's the best path forward. What I don't understand, and y'all may already know because y'all been heavily involved in this, but I don't understand why the constables don't just go ahead and, they're already authorized by state law. It's in the ordinance. They have the authority, the right to issue a citation for littering and handle it through justice of the peace court. How come they just don't go ahead and follow that process that is a totally separate process
Well, they
from
do.
the sheriff's
Okay,
department
so
being handled through the
what I'm getting
21st
from them
JDC?
is,
So why
let's
don't they
say,
just go ahead and do it?
let's say you throw a bag of garbage out and they give you a ticket. And they tell you when to appear in the JP court. Well, if you don't show,
Okay, so what does the state law or what does the ordinance say
Well,
about the
it-
penalty for a non-payment or a no-show?
well, it says any violation of this section may be tried in 21st JDC after they don't show.
So I think
Go
all
ahead.
we're trying to do is basically, we had an ordinance that really didn't mirror state law. And I think what we're trying to do is have our ordinance follow the same protocol that state law. Basically, I don't think we have any changes. What changes do we have with respect to how state law is written?
Okay, so if you look at it on D, Mr. Moody, suggested that we change the $600 fine and the $6,000 fine to $500 and $5,000, cause that's the state law max.
Okay.
E, Angie has reworded it, it just clarified that the justice of the peace could have the court.
Right, and if I'm not mistaken, I think typically, if this thing was passed the way it is, if a sheriff deputy wrote a ticket, it can go to 21st JDC. And if a constable wrote a ticket, typically it was gonna go to JP court. I talked to Jennifer Meyer yesterday on the phone, and she says, I've never had a JP send me a check.
Not one.
She said, because I don't think they handle litter. Like on evictions, the way the eviction law is written, any of those funds collected the parish doesn't get part of it. The way state law is written, specifically on the littering deal, the parish gets half of the fine. So basically, she said, if they sent me a check, I am prepared to accept the fine check and issue back half of the fine to JP court.
And
So
she wouldn't have to set up a collections
She's
thing or anything
prepared
to do
for
that.
She
Okay,
said that
okay.
if we instituted this law.
Did you ever
and
get an
then-
answer on your email?
And basically that if, let's say for example, Jeff Saxey is the JP in my district. If the constable, Mr. Robert, wrote a ticket, and they went to court, Jeff held, litter court in JP, found the party guilty, they would then be responsible for writing a check to the parish to pay their fine. At which point the parish would accept the fine and then send 50% of the revenue back to JP court and let them know the fine had been paid and whatever. So that's basically how I understand the way the state law was written, and we're prepared to do it. I think that it's because of the way our law was written prior, we didn't really mirror state law, so we didn't get the same impact or our.
So by doing so, it should work out fine.
It should, basically, anything that we're proposing is I think the only difference between this and state law is the fact that if we need to reduce the fines back to what the state law says.
Yeah, I agree with that, so that it mirrors it, and then there won't be any discrepancies,
Won't be any questions whatsoever.
right?
Okay.
So you still confused, or you, I mean,
No, I'm not confused.
well, you said you was,
I guess the change here is that now the constables are going to be able to, issue a citation for littering and,
I was already there, right?
and have it prosecuted in 21st JDC.
Well,
They haven't been doing that.
Well, they
you know.
can have them, but I'm just gonna tell you, the constable's not gonna go to 21st JDC. Cause basically the 21st JDC doesn't deal with litter. They can, they just don't. They have enough going on already. So
That was some of my concern.
we're paying to have constables in JP. We, in our budget, pay to have constables in JP, service limits of parish.
Right.
So let's
Why not use
let's just utilize them to solve some of the problems that we have. It doesn't do any good to spend $20,000 putting up littering signs across a parish if nobody's gonna prosecute you for throwing stuff out your car. Here's the deal. If somebody goes and dumps 6 bags of garbage on one of the roads in your district, and this is not a criticism of anybody, the sheriff department has enough stuff to handle. They're not gonna go dig through 6 bags of garbage and look for who did it. But I guarantee you, your constable will. Probably. You know what I'm saying?
If we talk to them, get them in line, they understand that it'll be a
certain
benefit to them to do so, cause they'll be getting half the fine back for their, for
And that's
enforcement.
not a criticism of anybody.
No,
It's just the fact
absolutely
that
not.
The sheriff has
They
certain
busy.
things that they got,
Yeah.
that they're really responsible for, and everybody's got time and stuff's gotta be prioritized. And
Yeah.
so I think if we enact the ordinance, then we're gonna solve some of these other problems that we have. And they'll go through JP court. In JP court, there's a process, just like any other thing that's outlined in state law, how this stuff is run. And if the justice of the peace
Well, and
determine they're
ours is
guilty,
ready to run with it in our district, so,
determine that they're guilty and assess a fine.
I
the
feel better
parish-
about it.
The parish has the mechanism ready
so
to,
let's get it ready for 2 weeks from Thursday.
so fix it. I
Well,
mean,
it'd be
we need to
December 3rd, whenever that is.
Yeah, whenever, yeah. We only have one
Fix
in
the
November,
wording,
right?
send it to Chris, make sure he
I
has
think you got it
no
right.
issue with it.
Well, we gotta
Right.
change some of those dollar figures and some
Yeah,
things.
no, it's pretty much, the only thing that we don't have completed is the
The
dollar
fine stuff.
figures, which is.
What about signage? Did we get an answer on that at all?
I emailed April today to try to get her, she's gonna send it to me because her digital design.
The way their
is
thing, yeah.
It's in different pieces, but, the questions that I handed you, those were just questions that we.
From the
all
other night?
had.
Yeah,
And
several nights?
I think, I mean, I was gonna ask y'all if y'all thought it would be beneficial to tell the constables and the justice of the peace that we're doing this.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Council.
And I actually told Jeff when he came, is that what we need to do is maybe have a meeting of all of them that are interested in doing it, and tell them what we expect from them to do. This isn't gonna cure littering in Livingston Parish, but if it keeps some litter off the road without any additional cost, then it makes sense.
And then when you wanna put those signs up to advertise the litter thing, at least you got a revenue stream to help offset it, so it's not
Sure.
impacting the general fund and taking money out of the
Right.
SWAT program.
And so, I think it's something that if we don't start, you're never gonna get anywhere with it. So, I think let's do it for the December.
We probably could budget for the signs, you
Well,
do
we
so much
could
each
just
year,
budget,
you could put
yeah.
more signs each year. You
I
don't have to
agree.
Well,
Spend $100 million the first year, but.
Yeah, right.
I definitely think we need to look at, I mean,
Well, I asked for 250 signs, and it was gonna be $32,000. Okay? If we did that every year,
Right.
Wouldn't be a big deal, we could.
Well, let's look at putting a line item in there somewhere.
That's exactly what we
Whether,
need.
and I'm gonna be honest with you, I hate to say this, not every program, we got 3 capable women in our office that are more than capable of having stuff done. We
Oh,
don't-
absolutely.
We could do some of this stuff in conjunction with, you know, whether it be the chamber or somebody else. We don't necessarily have to do everything through
Ourselves.
DPW
Right.
or through some particular
Well,
organization.
we just need to make sure
We
that
could
that's
actually, if
legal
we
for,
wanted to,
wasn't that
we
one
could
of the
actually-
The
questions?
CDA.
Yeah, to split some of the costs with the it behooves the chamber to have a clean parish, because our businesses fail also when it's filthy nasty everywhere, you
Yeah,
know?
there's stories out there that businesses have decided that after they rode through and looked at the trash on the road, that they wasn't gonna do business.
Layton told me himself, he rode through my area and said that people went, no, that's ridiculous. You know, we need business, we need industry of some type.
Yeah, we need trash off the street.
Maybe we'll get some of
And
this
in the
Green New
can.
Deal now.
Man, ain't a single election certified. Don't start on no Green New Deal, man. I can tell you, I'm not giving up hope that the Trump train gonna figure it out.
They get closer every minute.
So do we have to wait on these new signs to be,
He can't record it if you
Come
ain't.
sit up here, man.
do we have to wait for the new signs to be developed,
No,
to be put up? What do we have in stock from DPW
Nothing.
that we
they
can
don't
put
have
up?
any litter
I
signs.
have been doing this since March, trying to get signage put up. I sent an email out 3 weeks ago, or 2 weeks ago, and,
Yeah, they
And-
do, DPW does have litter signs.
The old one that's little,
It's
this
the
little bitty.
one, and what you requested was the litter sign with the
Fine.
fines on them.
Yeah.
But and that's when I told them, put up the litter signs, but don't put the sign on them, because they can put the fines on them.
You can always
Because
put
I
another
knew
one
you
right
were gonna
below it.
change
okay,
So the litter sign that you requested should be up, but it's just not gonna have a fine on it, because the fines aren't.
but that's fine, because
Well,
Hood
and then
Road,
once
Hood Road
those
has
signs
changed.
get made, then you can swap it out because the fine needs to be on there.
Well, I've been fighting this since March.
Well, they can say
trying to get stuff put
$5,000
up,
maximum
Get cleaned
fine.
up,
Yeah.
so.
But we have to, G.
I know all the
It's-
parish has, but,
yeah,
I'm
it's,
fighting for the people that live on Hood Road, it's a dump.
Okay, well,
So thanks for that answer.
Yeah,
So everybody's got it on TV, so they'll know.
yeah, okay.
anything else?
So we'll address that at the one council meeting from
We're gonna
Thursday.
get to the end Thursday.
Actually, I think the budget's being introduced, isn't the budget on the agenda to be introduced Thursday night?
We'll talk about doing some
I mean,
signage
if you
and
wanna-
things
if you
in.
wanna- If there's a
So
specific
that means
issue, Gerald,
Jennifer's gonna be here.
if you want a specific issue you wanna talk about,
I want the
Where-
white signs.
just ask them, where's the money for litter signs in this budget? So where's it at? Show
And
me
we
the line
can, we
item.
can put us a line. And if there's room in the budget, which there should be, especially for next year, cause we're paying off our road bond, that's road stuff.
So, I mean, I'm just gonna tell you, that's the question, when it's introduced, that's the question I'd ask, cause the lady that's gonna introduce is gonna be here. She
Yep.
can tell you exactly where's the line item for litter signs? And if she says there isn't one, say, well, where are we gonna put it? That's all, I mean, that's how you gotta handle it.
Yeah, and she'll give you a straightforward answer.
Anything else?
Nope,
We got a motion to adjourn?
you do.
Got one motion by Shane, second by Scooter. Any objection? Thank y'all.